Hi, I'm Gordon Perry. Join Gail Scott, Wally Watts, Andy Ronaldo, and me each weekday morning for CTV's Canada AM.
Tomorrow we'll be celebrating the 50th anniversary of the discovery of the planet Pluto, and we'll meet singer Susan Jaggs.
And we'll examine the historical influence of working people in Canadian society.
That's tomorrow on Canada AM. Best way to start your day.
Webster is next on BCTV.
Good morning. Remember, all you people who were off yesterday, that this is Wednesday, not Monday. Mixed bag today, including one very real person. Not everybody is a politician, not everybody is promoting something or other. First man you're going to meet this morning, I meet many of them. This one I put on film. He's going to go to jail for non-payment of support. So when are you going to jail?
Friday the 14th.
Why are you going to jail?
Because I won't pay maintenance. Really.
Why won't you pay the maintenance?
Because I don't believe it's fair that I should pay them.
You hear that? You'll see that story off the top of the program. But I have a non-real person here this morning, if you don't mind a little nag to begin with. His name is Jim Fleming. He's the $6 million Liberal cabinet minister in charge of propaganda, it is alleged, and the man who, on behalf of his government, can answer some questions this morning about their freshly arrogant behavior. After that, we're going to have some fun. I am the original hockey fan of the Canucks in the NHL. What happened last night? I should have had Harry Neale, who's here this morning, and Captain Kevin McCarthy here the other day, Saturday morning, instead of this morning after last night's 8-2 defeat. What are we going to see? This is Friday night. Victory, the 7th one straight at home, and we were sure that last night was going to be the 8th victory. But something went wrong, and Harry and Kevin are here to tell us all about it. There they are, the great Neale and the great McCarthy. After that, we're going to have the great Cook, Chuck Cook, Tory MP. Well, he's entitled to his say. We'll try and keep it bright. But we'll come back with a man that's going to jail after the break. There is no end to the first report you're going to see on Webster this morning. It is a common feeling among men, married, divorced or separated, who feel that the system of maintenance and enforcement is highly unfair. This man's name will not be used. You are not going to see the face of the man I am about to interview for one very simple reason. It is one side of a story. He feels a great injustice is about to be done to him. The other side of the story is a woman in Ontario. I have checked this man's basic facts. The basic facts are correct. What he thinks about the system may or may not be quite right. But let me put it to you, sir. When are you going to jail?
Friday the 14th.
Why are you going to jail?
Because I won't pay maintenance. Really.
Why won't you pay the maintenance?
Because I don't believe it's fair that I should pay them. I've raised 2 children up to 21 years, and I've done most of it myself.
How much do you owe in maintenance right now?
$1,500.
Have you got the $1,500 to pay it?
Yes.
Now, if you go to jail for how long?
14 days.
and you come out after the 14 days, does that wipe out your indebtedness to the court order?
No,
In other words, you'll go to jail for 14 days, where in Ocala,
I don't know.
right? And you've got an order to go to jail right now,
The judge said I would go to jail.
unless you divvy up with the $1,500 on Friday in court. Is that correct?
That's correct.
When did this all start? How long were you married to this woman?
22 years.
How old are your children?
21 and 20.
When did the marriage split up?
1972.
So that's 8 years ago.
Correct.
Now, you've done something wrong. You've fouled up the system. What was the first order you had against you way back in '72?
It was an agreement that I would pay her $200 a month.
Now,
I did. For 6 months while she was in BC here.
and then what did she do?
Then she told me that I was having trouble. She told me that she was going to Ontario and she would look after herself. She could see that I was having trouble and the kids were doing better without her.
So you paid $200 a month for 6 months. She went off to Ontario, and you didn't pay any more.
That's correct.
Now, but she came back to haunt you in 1975, did she not?
That's correct.
What did you pay then?
They said that I had to pay $100 a month then, and I didn't pay it because I figured that up until then she had looked after herself and I had raised the kids, so
So you got away with not paying the 1975 order,
that's correct.
and you didn't pay all of the 1972 order.
Yes, I did, as long as she was here in BC.
But the moment she left the province, you thought, the heck with it, that's the end of it.
That's correct, and she agreed, and I also give her $300 too to go to
All
Ontario.
right, now, you had a house in
Westminster.
Westminster. What happened to that house in Westminster?
We sold it last fall. She got half. I paid all the expenses, and I give her $1,200 besides.
How much was the half of the house she got?
Somewhere around $14,000.
She got that $14,000 when? Last September.
Last September or October, yeah.
And you gave her $1,200 in addition to that.
That's correct.
And on top of that, she has now come back at you through the courts because you haven't been paying the $100 a month.
That's correct.
And what you owe is $1,500 arrears.
Yes.
Now, you married this woman. Surely she helped to bring up the children until 1972.
No, she did not.
You mean she was not a good wife to you?
That's correct. She was not a fit mother. I had no problems getting the custody of the children in '72.
You got legal custody of the children in 1972.
I did.
What do you do for a living?
I'm a fisherman and a logger.
Are you a wealthy man?
By no means, no.
Do you have a boat of your own?
Yes, I do.
What's it worth?
Somewhere between $40,000 and $50,000.
How much did you make last year as a fisherman?
$12,000.
How much did you make as a logger?
Nothing yet.
Nothing as a logger.
Nothing.
Well, now, you married this woman. You were ordered by the courts to pay certain money. You didn't pay it, right?
That's correct.
Why should you be surprised that you're going to be sent to jail if you don't show a cause why you didn't make up your maintenance money?
Well, I've showed cause, but they don't seem to want to listen. They just want to know how much money you have and if you can afford to pay it. I don't believe that she deserves it. I think she has got more than she deserves now.
She got the half of the house, $14,000,
Plus $1,200 that
Plus
I give to her.
but you still have an order. Now, why don't you go back to the court and plead your case again and ask for the order to be varied, that she's had enough?
Apparently you can't appeal the decision.
You can't appeal the show cause contempt decision. When you come out of jail, what are you going to do?
I haven't come to that yet.
What are
I
your
don't know.
plans? Are you stubbornly determined not to pay any of this money?
Yes,
Why?
because I don't think it's just. I don't think it's right.
I mean, she wasn't a good wife.
That's right. She was more of a hindrance than a help for 9 years.
Who brought up the kids? You?
I did till '72.
Did you do it by yourself, or did you have another woman living with you who was a financial drain on you?
No, I looked after them until '72. Then I hired a woman to look after them for the next 5-6 years.
And now the kids have gone.
Kids have gone.
But you've still got to make up this money or you're down the tube in the bucket.
That's correct.
What can I do to help you?
I don't know, Jack. I don't know.
You feel it's unfair?
I feel it's unfair, very unfair.
Has there ever been, are you divorced?
No,
Has there ever been a time when you've sat down in court, the two of you, with a judge, and discussed the merits of the marriage as to whether or not she deserved the money?
no.
How many lawyers have you had over the years?
3.
They've been quite helpful.
Yes.
What's wrong with the system?
They don't want to listen to what you have to say. They just want to know how much money you've got and if you can afford it.
You're not tempted to pay up instead of going to jail?
No.
Let me know what happens.
I will.
And I'll let you know what happens. You can't help but feel a bit sorry for the man. It's his side of the story. I don't know the wife's version of the story. I know that this man has a common law relationship now and the burden's probably heavy, but the facts of the matter are that once you're faced with an order, if you don't pay it, and it's going to be enforced under the laws across the country, from Ontario to here, you're nailed. Unless you can show you haven't got the money, and he's got a fish boat, right? Tough one. Maybe one of these days I'll have to do, once again, this question of a lot of male unhappiness about what they feel is injustice once a marriage goes sour and the wife's been away for years. Well, that's real people. Next, we're going to talk to Jim Fleming, the Minister of State for Multiculturalism, of which I am not the greatest fan. We shall, of course, start with what I regard as another piece of liberal short-sighted arrogance with Jimmy Baby after the break.
Lost without some of the box.
That's right.
30 seconds.
I mean, it's his policy. Jim Fleming, quite seriously, is a cabinet minister for the Liberal federal government from Ontario. Jim, because you and I used to work on a 2-bit chintzy television show 10 or 12 years ago called Newsmaker's Match.
Right.
And it collapsed, didn't it?
Well, we left, Jack. That's why.
And that basis, I can really be direct with you. Can you explain, for the benefit of mystified Western Canadians especially, why your government is taking such a short-sighted view as to deny television and radio coverage of the committee discussions on the Constitution? Because this is the one thing. It's all very well to see all you stumble about during question period, which we can see on a cable channel. But what we want to see is this television committee. Now, what are you hiding and why are you hiding it?
Jack, I'm not hiding anything. I was one of the guys who fought very hard for television in the House, and I still have people come up to me after a fairly raucous day and give me the elbow in the ribs, other members of Parliament, and say, see what happens when you're televised. What happened was that the Liberal members, and you know, it may or may not be credible, but it's what happened. The senators decided it'd be very disruptive to have those cameras swinging around, lights going on. It'd be a place of grandstanding. And therefore, and that's an argument that's common. BC doesn't have it in its legislature. I gather that's the argument. I think television should be there. The senators on the Liberal side, they got together with the members and they had their vote, and except for Bryce Mackesy, they voted it down. It's my personal view, because that was a committee decision, that wasn't a productive decision.
What do you mean?
Because
it was a
people
bad
think,
decision.
well, yeah, it's a bad decision, except I think it's got to be put in a fair context. Number one, radio, television, newspaper reporters are still there. It'll still be reported, but you don't get the sight and sound. You don't get modern communications. Number two, there would be a disruptive element, and there was some accusation there'd be a delaying tactic by the Tories because of the time limit to have that discussion, because you'd say, how long to set up television? If you want television, we've got to wait until the television's set up. I think that it's another red herring that's keeping people from learning what the contents of the constitutional package are. For that reason, I think it's unfortunate. We could have overcome the problems and put it on, but that's my view.
You're telling me that we don't know. Many of us do not know the contents of the constitutional package, including yours truly. Mm-hmm. And God knows I've tried to understand it. You get three interpretations every time, right? Well, I will, if necessary. I'll explain what I understand it to be. Okay. But you're telling me that you, as a great, decent Ontario Liberal, wanted to televise the committee, but you were overruled by the entire caucus.
No, I wasn't overruled by anybody. I'm also a Canadian as well as an Ontarian. I don't know how Ontario relates to it.
But first, you're a Liberal.
No, I'm saying I'm a member of the Liberal Party. I'm a member of the cabinet, and we have to make collective decisions. That wasn't discussed in cabinet, and cabinet didn't give a direction. The Liberal members decided that it would be disruptive. I'm just trying to make a parallel so you don't focus them out and say they're the only bad guys in the world because you disagree with them. You and I agree it should be televised. I don't have the power or authority to order it to be televised. They do as members of that committee. I think they made a mistake. But there are some arguments. Number one, it's not keeping away from the public what's going on. It's removing direct sight and sound. It is doing that. Number two, even a number of our legislatures still won't have television, like the BC legislature, because they say it's disruptive. I'm just saying.
Let's face it, Jimmy. Is the BC legislature important on the constitutional context?
Well,
no,
I think I think the BC. No, but it's the same principle.
Debate.
It's the same
principle. You know perfectly well that your Speaker of your House ruled that it would have to be a resolution of the House to force the televising of that committee.
I'm not sure she did rule that. She said it was either the committee or the House, and if the House wanted to overrule the committee, and that ruling is rather unclear. And I don't want to get myself in Dutch starting to judge the Speaker. I'm not an expert in House rules,
let's
Jack.
put it this way. You disagree totally with Trudeau on this person to person.
No.
If Trudeau had got up in the House, or the government House leader had introduced a motion in the House saying, this House recommends that the constitutional debate, which must be back in report by December the 9th, is going to be on television and radio, that would have been done.
Well, I'm not sure, because there still is a question. Our House leader argues the Speaker's decision is unclear, and it's quite a cluttered scene. I'm trying to argue the fundamental principle. My sense is it should be there, but by not being there, that doesn't close out the public being aware of those discussions. It would be better if it was there. There were reasons that they voted the way they did, even if I disagree with them.
I agree.
That's what I'm
the
trying to say.
reasons were that Trudeau wants to keep the debate as short as possible.
Trudeau did not direct them on that.
But if Trudeau had directed them, you would have followed properly in lines with his wishes, and the thing would have been televised.
Yeah, but Yvon Pinard, the House leader, clearly states, and that's where there's a big difference, and it's not a winning issue for us, I agree, and it clutters the scene, but Pinard argues it's up to the committee. The Speaker now seems to say if the committee can be overruled if the House so wants to, but I'm unclear on that. All I'm saying is that the press will still be there, it'll still be reported. My personal view is it would be better to have television, but they had some reasons for it not being there, such as a lot of grandstanding day by day rather than thoughtful discussion.
You know perfectly well that most of the information that goes to people now comes from television and radio and not from newspapers.
Yes, and one of the problems is that, and frankly, and I'm an old broadcaster, you know that television is very fleeting. You get an emotional moment. It's like back in the 50s and the black and white confrontation in the South. It was the one moment of the shooting that, brought the focus. It's an emotional thing, television. You're a success on it because you're emotional and vibrant.
Me
and
emotional,
like
don't
that.
be bloody silly. How could
right, exactly. But can you imagine reading Jack Webster in the newspaper? It wouldn't be the same. It would be a little more.
How do you know?
Well, I don't know. Write something for me. Let me have a look at it.
You're getting off the point. However, let me take another attack on you.
Yeah.
As the minister in charge of propaganda, how much money are you going to have up your sleeve to sell any referendums down the road after there's a deadlock with the provincial governments on constitutional change?
There's no money there now for that.
How much did you spend the last time around before the First Minister's Conference for Liberal propaganda?
Now that's a good question. You're saying during the referendum? Or leading up to the First Minister's? $6 million. You had it on the logo at the front. $6 million was the amount spent running the geese and so on, trying to reassure Canadians this was a positive exercise.
But let
me point something out in all that.
Our tax money.
Yes, it's mine too. Let me point out the essence of that effort was to remind Canadians when day by day we had one provincial minister or another taking on Jean Chrétien, fighting as provincial ministers must do for their own little piece of Canada. And it was getting to be a very negative thing, and people were getting fed up. And we felt it was important, and it represented all sides of the House of Commons to tell them, after 113 years, it's time for constitutional reform. We didn't, without taxpayers' expense, present the view of one party, as Mr. Bennett has done, as Mr. Lougheed's done, as Mr. Peckford's done, as a number of them have done. At least we put forward a view that widely represented all the leaders. That was why it was rather bland.
It was very bland.
Because once you get beyond just simply saying it's time for reform, there are a variety of views. It'd be inappropriate without Parliament's approval to do that.
Jim Fleming, Minister of State for Multiculturalism, which many people regard as, put that to him after the break. The Canucks. Constitution crisis. Trudeau has a plan. It's unilateral. Two areas where he could have trouble, Mr. Fleming, said Webster with considerable grace and favour and respect. One is the British House of Commons might balk. If the British House of Commons did balk, Trudeau would be really in a dreadful spot, wouldn't he?
Geez, I don't think so. There have been 18, not to spew a lot of statistics, Jack, there have been 18 times since Confederation we've amended the Constitution. 3 of those cases, the provinces were involved and consulted. One was Newfoundland coming in, the other one was resources. But if the British House, the backbenchers, you know, everybody wants some ink. They got this guy, George, who was out here a while ago, a Labour MP. He wants his ink. But if the leadership allowed it to run amok, I think that it would, I think Trudeau would have the country rally to him, and I think Britain would be in a hell of a spot at the Commonwealth. How dare you continue to be a colonial power and decide in your parliament?
Perfectly good answer. Carrington has a perfectly good answer. We don't mind giving you back your jolly old Constitution, but damned if we're going to write a Bill of Rights for you. Why don't you just take the bleeding thing away?
Well, and the answer to that is until they send that Constitution home, it's their responsibility to pass what the Parliament of Canada asks them to pass. And they've done it every other time in the past.
Bending the knee to the Brits.
Oh, I don't see it bending a knee.
Give us a new Constitution.
No, Joe says that. Joe says that we're begging the Brits to do something.
Joe, you mean Mr. Clark?
Mr. Clark.
Little respect, please.
Well, he and
respect.
I came into Parliament together, and my friend Joe, Mr. Clark, says that's asking the Brits to do it for us. That is not true. The fact is, the way we amend our Constitution until we bring it home and have a formula is to go to Britain and say the Parliament of Canada wants this, and it's their job not to question it, but to pass it. That's the system. So they've done it 18 times, Jack.
There's no danger, therefore, of Trudeau chancing to upset Ontario and what's left of the WASPs there by a unilateral declaration of independence.
I think that's the big red herring that's been thrown out.
It's a cute little story, though, isn't it?
Yeah. But
Trudeau declaring the UDI. Banning British immigrants to this country because it's no longer acceptable.
This great country of ours thrives on red herring springing up province from province, and you got one national government that's always at the far end of the red herring.
And you're an expert in $6 million red herrings.
No, I'm not an expert on anything. I just think that if Canadians better understood the role of their national government, we wouldn't be as divided as we are. And the problem is we're a huge country and a small population, and we'll always struggle over our differences. But we won't survive as one homogeneous group. We'll survive by understanding each other. And a little bit of information may help people to understand each other.
Say that again about homogenous groups?
Homogenous. When you work for the CBC, it's okay, homogenous. You won't survive if we don't respect our differences. That's multiculturalism, which you aren't very fond of.
Question. I'm not a redneck about multiculturalism. As I've said before, if I want a set of bagpipes, I'll buy them myself. And if I want to wear a kilt, I'll buy it myself or borrow it from someone. What is your budget to encourage ethnic multiplicity in this country? Just give me the bold, bald figure that you give out in ethnic payola.
My bold, bald budget to help Canadians to understand each other and respect each other and not feel inferior because they aren't Anglophone or Francophone is $11 million.
Why can't they do that on their own resources?
For the best part, they do. But there are problems with immigrant women and fitting into society. We try and help with that.
Education is something else again. I mean, we've got a problem in this town with 40% of all the elementary students at least. 60% in some classrooms have English as a second language. Now, that $11 million put into the school systems one way or another to help these immigrants learn English would be a hell of a lot better than setting up folk festivals.
Well, in fact, some of it goes towards that, Jack. Some of it goes towards
folk festivals.
No, some of it goes to folk festivals. Yes, some of it goes to help boat people and boat people's children learn English here in Vancouver. We help people write histories of their particular community in Canada so they can have some pride. Multiculturalism is simply an effort that all Canadians, including the 1/3 who aren't Anglophone or Francophone, feel that they're equal and have the right to carry with pride their heritage. That may sound crazy, but that's the reality. I talked to a very prominent member of the Vancouver Chinese community last night, and she said that somebody attacked her at some conference because she thought this person thought that multiculturalism was a crock. And she said, all it does for me is make me feel equal to everybody else and know that's the principle. And that's all we're trying to do. And remember, it's supported by all parties in the House of Commons for that reason. And if somebody says that's money to hand out to the ethnics, well, hold on now. The idea is we're all equal in this country. We help the native people. We help the language minorities, French and English. We have cultural things like the Canada Council for all of our citizens, and a little bit of money in comparison to help level disparity between peoples and misunderstanding this country. That's all it is. It's not to divide, it's to bring them together.
In other words, if you were still a journalist, as you once were, and broadcaster, you wouldn't take the cynical view held by a number of people whom I know, liberals and conservatives alike. The NDP are not guilty of these evil thoughts because they're Simon Pure. That multiculturalism really is a way of securing fealty and loyalty to the government in power, which is very useful at election time for some form of block voting.
But if that were true,
It's
and the
not
Liberals
true, is
were
it?
always successful, oh, I think it's true that any government tries to respond to people. You're crazy if you don't, you won't be in office. But why do all parties support it if it's such a liberal thing? Why did Steve Poprosky, as the minister, continue it in the Clark government? Because it serves a purpose.
Because nobody has any guts.
Oh, listen, Jack, there are a lot of Canadians who fear that you, with your Anglo-Celtic background, and French Canadians dominate them. The Ukrainians on the prairies, the Poles, the very large German community. We're simply trying to help level differences and people feeling second class. And we don't spend a heck of a lot of money at it when you consider the overall budget.
Only
of the federal
$11 million.
government. Out of what? Billions of dollars in federal spending.
Yeah, and billions of dollars in federal budgetary deficits. Is it 12 or 14 billion this year?
Well, that's because we're paying 60 or 70% of post-secondary education in this province. How many BCers know that? The federal government, the guys they sometimes don't like so much, pay 60 or 70%, or of Medicare. Because we got ourselves into a lot of things where we felt...
50% of Medicare. It was.
Oh, no, it's not anymore. You take a look. It's way more than that. What happened is that so-called arrogant federal government agreed to block funding rather than cost sharing. And ever since then, a number of the provinces have been withdrawing and let us carry the load.
Not British Columbia. Emmett Hall cleared the Social Credit Government of BC in that, much as I hate to say it, but he
Let me
did.
go. It's only 50-50 here. Well, in Ontario, it's something like 67 or 68% being paid by the federal government. I thought it was more than 50% here. But I don't have the
How are
hard
they
facts.
feeling in Ontario now? Do they feel
Who are you
kind of
who are you talking
neglected and
about?
lonely?
No, I think
I mean, they're so
Ontarians
proud.
as good Canadians.
Ontario can now afford to get equalization grants, but Davis is so proud he won't apply for it. Isn't that right?
I tried to sell it, yes. I tried to tell that to some students in Brandon, Manitoba the other day, and they all hooted. And I said, no, we're a have-not province in Ontario, but we're too proud to take the money. Or Mr. Davis is.
A have-not province that's been protected by Confederation for 100 and some years.
Yeah, but there's a trade-off and balance back and forth. I'm not going to argue some of them are quite legitimate grievances in this huge country. I'm just saying the end is not to fall apart. The end is to figure out a fair trade-off.
Jim Fleming, Minister of State for Multiculturalism. You got a good stock lecture on it. I may have to believe some of it, but it just kind of goes against the grain.
Of a good Celt.
I'm not a Celt. I'm
Aren't
a
you?
Canadian.
I'm a Canadian
I've been
too,
here
but I'm proud.
34 years.
Do you have a kilt?
No, I borrowed one for the press gallery dinner. I wouldn't have
So
a
you
kilt.
still wear it with some pride. Well, you're proud of your heritage.
No, I only
too.
wear it as a gag.
Oh, well, then you're a bad
I
Canadian of
still
Celtic
take the odd
origin.
dram of Glenfiddich just
You
to
see.
maintain the cultural heritage.
So you've got it in your blood.
Tell me, Jimmy, December the 9th and July the 1st next year, we're going to have the Constitution back here come hell or high water. That's the Liberal plan.
No, maybe. The Liberal plan is, you know, and we tried to do that with closure again. We said to the Conservatives, do you want to sit over the supper? Do you want to sit late in the evening? Do you want to sit weekends if you want to discuss more? We're trying to be reasonable, but there's a window. If you don't respond to Quebec pretty soon, if we don't make our reforms now, in a year from now, I think it'll be lost. This is the chance, and the chance will be gone. That's my opinion.
My thanks to Jim Fleming, Minister of State for what I told you about, and the Minister in charge of propaganda and future referenda. Eh?
No, I don't think so.
You don't think so? You want to stay in politics?
For a while.
Are you after the Prime Minister's job too?
No.
Are you bilingual?
I can get along in French. Better in French than Gaelic.
But if you're not truly bilingual, Joe Clark, you got to give Joe full credit.
Yes, he worked hard at that. Yes, you
Worked
do.
hard at that. Thanks, Jimmy.
Thank you.
Now we're going to have a little bit of relaxation and fun about something really important to the people of British Columbia. How the Canucks got beaten last night, 8-2, after the break.
Gets you in here. Once you're in, you're in. Okay, could you just spin around a little bit?
Thanks, Phyllis. If you see Barbara, tell her I love her.
Well, he's all right, Jim. Fleming's all right. He's not like the rest of them. He's all right.
Thanks again, Jimmy.
Stand by.
To say that I was disappointed last night is anything but an exaggeration. So this morning, immediately after the game, I went along and I said, Harry, you got to come on the program in the morning. Harry Neale, the Vancouver Canucks. Kevin McCarthy, the captain of the Vancouver Canucks. Harry, before I burst into tears, what happened last night? 8-2, St.
Well,
Louis.
They were better than us in all departments, and when that happens, sometimes you get beaten. It's too bad that our streak's dead now, but we'll have to start a new one.
When are you going to start the new one?
Friday night.
Against?
Montreal.
Didn't Montreal win last night?
8-2, yeah.
8-2 against?
Colorado.
Colorado. Are you not a little bit afraid that Montreal are coming back out of the slump and make him win? Didn't they once beat us 10-something, Montreal?
Probably. I can't recall. I try and forget those games.
But actually, you analysed that for me last night. I'm just the average fan. I know nothing about the intricacies of hockey. And my favourite player, Kevin accepted at the moment, is Lance, whom I think is fantastic. But what did Lance do wrong last night?
Well, first of all, he had 18 partners in making a few mistakes we haven't made recently. But I think that Rick didn't have as good a night as he's had in the past and will have in the future. And like a lot of young players who are very competitive, when things started to go a little wrong, he perhaps took it upon himself to try and do too much. And this league has a way of burning people who try to do that.
Was that the first night you were kind of even a wee bit disappointed in this wonderful wee fella Brodeur?
He wasn't as sharp as he's been, but he was left without too much protection from time
From
to
a
time.
player's point of view last night, Kevin, what was the basic difference between the Canucks and St. Louis?
Well, I think basically the big difference was they played their game the way they did. We didn't play our game the way we should have. I think we've been playing winning games by moving the puck up to the forwards and letting them do their job. And last night we tried to do too much as the defense and instead of going out there and doing our jobs.
The wee fat man in NW said this morning, I think it was the wee fat man in NW, said that St. Louis last night played a bit like Montreal at its better, in its better games. Would you agree with that, Harry?
Well, I don't know.
Back checking?
They played a very solid game. I don't know that I've seen them play any better than they did last night in all departments. And when they did run into a little trouble, the goaltender made some great saves. And you know, when you lose 8-2 and their goalie gets the first star, it tells you a little something.
Yeah, we didn't even get the third star last night, did we?
Well, I think that's very fair.
In other words, we didn't even deserve the third star
No, we
last
didn't.
night. Tell me about your latest trade. Can't even pronounce the name.
Mario Marois,
How do you spell it?
M-A-R-O-I-S. Played the last 2 years with the Rangers. He's a right-handed defenseman who can move the puck. He's got some toughness. He can skate, and I think he's going to help balance out our defense and give us a little depth there that we don't think we have at the moment.
And one other guy.
Jim Mayer is playing in New Haven, and he will go to Dallas to start with. I had Jimmy in New England when I was coaching there, and he's very close to being a good NHL player. Whether he can get over the hump, I don't know. We're taking a chance on him, that's for sure. But we traded a fella from Dallas and Jeff Bandura that we weren't sure could play here either.
And Gillis, too.
We traded a good hockey player in Jerry Gillis, but you're not going to get a player of Marois' quality unless you give one up who can play in the league too. And for Jerry, it's a good opportunity, and I wish him well. He was caught in a numbers game at left wing where we have more quality people here, and we think some coming too. And it makes some sense if you're going to make a deal to trade from your strength.
How many defensemen does that give you now when you bring Marois?
We have 8.
8. You were using 4 lines last night too, weren't you?
Well, we're looking for one that could get us going, and some nights when you're not going, you hunt around and see if you can find a combination to stir you up, and we just couldn't get it done.
Don't get me wrong, I mean, I think you've performed absolutely magnificently this year. How many wins, how many losses, how many ties?
Oh, we're 9-5-2 right now.
9-5-2.
And we played 8 on the road. So.
Many people in tears after last night's game in the dressing room?
Well, I think it was quite a disappointment. The guys realized that the fans were behind us 100% and a full house, and we went and stunk the joint out, and the guys are really disappointed that way. And
yeah, it's a fact. The Vancouver Canuck fans given the slightest encouragement. Not a single boo last night even, was there?
No, there weren't.
Eh?
no, players realized that, and they were even behind us when the score was 5-6-2. They were still clapping their hands. And it made us feel good, but we just couldn't. I don't know what it was. We just couldn't seem to.
First couple of minutes, I thought you were away.
Yeah, we had them the first couple of minutes. They came down and scored, and they just took the game over from there.
That Fedorko, what's his name?
Bernie Fedorko.
Fedorko. Yeah. He's a nightmare, isn't he?
Yeah, he's one of the top centers in the league.
Listen, as I say, I'm a fan. I'm with you all the way. I hope you win the Stanley Cup.
Well, I'm with you there, I'll tell you.
Well, we'll be in the playoffs anyway
I
this year.
think that there's a possibility this year, a long shot, but we're a lot closer this year than we were last year.
How long have you been coach now?
This is my 3rd year here.
What's been your worst mistake?
Not
I haven't got one to throw at you.
Well, there's been a few, so let me give you one. Mike Rogers was available. Vancouver drafted him, and he went to the WHA and played 2 years for me there. I didn't think that we should reclaim him, and he got 106 points last year.
That was a boo-boo.
It was a big one.
Any more?
Lots more, but ask Kevin one now.
Ask Kevin. No, the best thing you did was move from Philadelphia, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's helped me. It's helped me. It's just turned out great. I can't ask for anything better.
Because you weren't happy in Philadelphia, as I recall from.
No, it's kind of a similar situation to myself and Jerry Gillis. I wasn't playing in Philadelphia. I was frustrated. I knew I could play in this league, and for some reason I wasn't playing. I come here and I got a chance to play, and I'm really happy the way things turned out.
Yeah, remarkably good. How old are you?
23.
195 pounds?
Yeah.
6 feet?
5'11".
5'11". I want to ask you an embarrassing question, and I hope...
I'll give you an embarrassing answer,
No,
I
no.
hope.
I hope Brodeur isn't embarrassed.
He won't.
It says in the program that Brodeur is 5'7". Now, it says that in the program. You can barely see his head above the crossbar. How tall is he with his skates off? He's magnificent. Don't misunderstand me. How tall is he? The truth, Harry Neale.
I don't know, but if you want me to measure him when I go to practice, I'll phone you.
I think he's terrific.
Yes, he's been excellent.
But he sure as hell ain't 5'7".
He looks 6'7" some nights.
Oh, he does. Last night was his first bad night that I've seen him in the...
He wasn't as sharp, and he had some guys that were going along with him in that department.
Don't know how they do it. Injuries this year. How are we doing for injuries? How bad is Williams' back?
It's sore.
It wasn't broken.
He had a little bone broken, a transverse process, a little bone about an inch that comes off the spine. Doesn't bear any weight or have any great muscle attachments, so it's one of those fractures that after a little bit of a rest, if you can stand the pain when you get hit, or when you hit someone, you can play. And I think Williams is one of the few guys that be playing with that injury.
How about Lindgren's tendon or nerve, whatever?
He has had no trouble with that. He wears a brace that limits his motion a little bit, and I asked him the other day how it felt, and he hasn't had any problem, and I hope he doesn't.
Apart from that, you've got no major injuries.
No, that's a big plus, is why our record is what it is, because we've been healthy all year. I just hope we can keep it
Touch
up.
wood.
Yeah.
Your questions now. All you ever wanted to know about Harry Neale, Kevin McCarthy, and the Canucks. Now, please. Short, sharp, succinct, and direct. You know more about the game than I do. I'm just a fan. After the break.
Look who has the puck. Number 1 and always wanting to be at center ice. Tiger Webster. He shoots. He scores. And he'll be back in 2 minutes.
Listen, all men on the phone. Every single one a man. No liberation in the hockey business. First of all, about the referees. How's the standard of the refereeing? I saw one referee at Fraser, Wednesday's game, and I thought he was awful. Do you have these kind of thoughts, or do you just accept the refereeing as the luck of the draw?
Well, they have bad nights. I would say that 85% of the time the referee does a decent job, but sometimes they try and be the show instead of the guy who controls the show.
That's when you put your foot up and start screaming.
Yeah, sometimes that...
Go ahead, please.
Yes, I'd like to ask Kevin McCarthy a question. What was your first reaction when you were traded to the Canucks? Because they have had a losing history, and didn't you think, oh no, not this?
Well, then no, actually it was the opposite, because at that time the Flyers weren't playing the way they had in the past, and Vancouver had been doing really well up to that point. And when I got there, I only played 1 game, so it was quite a frustrating experience for myself.
And then you got injured.
Yeah.
How long before you were out for a year, weren't you?
Yeah, 9 months.
What was the injury?
A hip.
How is it now?
Perfect.
Do you think you'll finish this game all in one piece?
I hope so.
How many players do finish it all in one piece?
Oh, there's quite a few with broken bones and a few stitches, but...
Goodbye. Go ahead, please.
Hello.
Yeah.
Jack, I'd like to ask a question to Harry Neale. Resulting is why didn't Vancouver be interested in Jerry Hart?
Well, I don't think he could help our defense.
Well, he's a great. Don't you find him a great grinding defenseman? A
Yes,
great grinder like Butler?
Yes, I do, but 20 teams, including the team that let him go, don't think he can help. I think Jerry Hart's been a great competitor, and 2 or 3 years ago, we'd have grabbed him in a minute, but I don't think he can help our defense now.
Go ahead, please.
Hello?
That's you.
I wanted to know about two short questions. One about Bobby Schmotz. Why isn't he on the point in the power play?
I think our power play is going very well now, and we don't want to take Kevin's job. He's on the point in the power play.
And just another one. How about your top farmhands in Dallas, especially Art Rutland?
Art's playing very well, we understand. He's well up in the scoring in that team, and he's a definite prospect for us.
What was that name?
Art Rutland.
Don't know him. Thanks very much. From Kamloops, go ahead, please.
Yes, I'd like to ask Harry Neale. Rick Blythe is in the minors. I understand he's drawing a big salary, and I just wondering if Harry thinks he'll be back to the team, or if he's going to try to make a deal for him.
Well, there's a good possibility he could come back here. We're quite pleased with the way our team's playing right now, and we don't anticipate making that kind of a change, but I think Rick's getting some confidence down there. He's leading his team in scoring, and I feel that he has an excellent chance of coming back here.
When they go down to the minors, they still draw the same money and whatnot.
Some do. Some are on a one-way contract and some are on a two-way contract. Rick's on a one-way one.
So he gets his money down there. A two-way, you can drop down to a lower level of money. Where am I going? Go ahead, please.
Yes, I was wondering, with the acquisition of the extra defenseman, does that mean that Dennis Kearns has left us?
Well, no, we have to move 1 or 2 defensemen out of here in the next day or two, and we haven't decided what we're going to do in that department yet.
And also, what about Harold Filipoff? When are we going to see him?
Well, Harold's playing pretty well in Dallas, too, but our left wingers are doing a good job here, and we're not going to make a move until we find that someone's not doing a job here or gets hurt.
Okay, how do the players take it, this back and forward? They've got a home here, they're down to Dallas. They must get pretty upset about it.
Yes, they do. It's not what they're looking for, that's for sure.
But they know it's going to happen when they come up to the team. They know they can go back anytime.
Well, some of them forget it from time to time, but it's a possibility for every player.
How's the morale?
Very good. It's the best since I've been here.
Good. Go ahead, please.
Yes.
That's you. Speak up.
Yeah, listen, we have, Vancouver has one of the toughest teams in the league, and I want to know why Harry Neale will let one player like Perry Turnbull go out first shift and intimidate the Canucks. He come out and gave Stan Smeel a stick in the face last night, and that was the last time he saw that line. Why wouldn't he combat it with something, like put another player on him or something?
Well, first I think Stan can handle himself. I know the play you're talking about, and you know, by the time we got very early in the game, we were behind, and I think that sometimes you have to realize that that happens, and if you retaliate every time something happens to you, you're going to be the whole night in the penalty box. And we play St. Louis 3 more times. You come to all those games.
Yeah, Harry, but I'll tell you something, though. Tiger Williams did the same thing last year to us twice, and we lost both games because of it.
That's why we got Williams.
Pardon?
That's one reason we got Williams.
Yeah, I know, but you didn't put somebody on him. I can't understand that. Eh?
Well, I don't think that Stan Smeel needs any help out there physically, and I'm sure that if...
Not Steamer.
Pardon?
I mean the Canucks, eh?
No, he's saying that Smeel doesn't need any help if somebody's going to tackle him. Look what happened last night when Tiger Williams threatened LaPointe.
That's right, he backed away.
Backed away just like nobody's business,
Yeah,
didn't
that's
he?
right.
Well, that was a good play by LaPointe because we were trying to get a defenseman out.
Are you supposed to put out heavies?
Pardon?
Oh, I'm asking Harry. If somebody gets threatened, are you supposed to put out a heavy to beat them up?
I don't think that's necessary for our team.
That's not what I meant. Don't get me wrong.
If somebody jumps Thomas Gerdine, he's going to have to put up with Fraser and Smeel, and everybody in the league knows that.
Okay, go ahead, please. What are you?
Yeah.
That's you, ma'am.
Oh,
Well, speak up then.
okay.
Pull yourself together.
First of all, I want to prove you wrong. There are plenty of women out here.
I merely said that all the phone calls at that time were all men.
Oh, well, I've been holding on quite a while
Well,
here. Anyway, the question I wanted to ask was, where did Harry Neale get Brodeur from, the goalie?
We got him in a trade with New York Islanders the day before the waiver draft.
Okay, I wondered why he wasn't in the photo for this year. And also,
Wasn't
how
in the
is
what?
Hanlon feeling injury-wise, and when do you expect him back? And how is he feeling about Brodeur's success?
Glenn Hanlon, you mean?
Yeah.
Glenn goes to the doctor today to get the original cast off. The doctor will have a look at his knee. He'll probably get a cast on that he can move and exercise and allow him some movement. And We're still looking at 10 weeks for Glenn Hanlon.
Another 10
no,
weeks?
No, 6 weeks. Another 6 weeks.
Another 6 weeks from now?
Really?
Yeah.
Anything else, ma'am?
No, that's it. But congratulations and keep going. You've been having a really good season so far.
Thank you, ma'am.
Take him out. Do you know yet who you're going to start Friday night against Montreal? In goal.
Brodeur will play.
Brodeur will play. I thought you might have used Bromley last night just to give Brodeur a rest.
I thought of it, but you know, Bromley hasn't played this year, and we weren't going too well, and I thought that perhaps if you throw Bromley in, he hasn't played, and the floodgates remain open, then it may not be.
Don't
what
want
he
to take
needs.
a chance. Go ahead, please.
Yes, Harry. Last night the game is at the end of the second period, it's 5-2. You're outplayed. You're out of the game. At the third period, why don't you start the other goalie, Bromley?
Well, I just mentioned that Gary Bromley hasn't played this year, and I thought of it, and we talked about it, Tom Watt and Dave Dunn and myself, but we decided that maybe that isn't the way to give Bromley his first taste of action, because it looked like St. Louis wasn't going to stop, and you know, if they'd have scored 4 or 5 on Bromley and he'd had a tough period, then what we would have had for the next game.
Hold on. One more session with Harry, Neale and Kevin McCarthy, coach and the captain of the Canucks, after the break. Money, man.
That'll be next.
Squamish, go ahead from Squamish.
Hello?
Yes. That's you at Squamish.
Hey, Harry?
Yes, sir.
Hello, Harry?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, first of all, yes. First of all, I'd like to congratulate you for having a very good year so far.
Thank you.
Okay. And,
Okay, you're going to have to put down your television set. You'll drive us all crazy. Go ahead, please.
Oh, you don't give us a feed on the line, Mr. Webster. Difficult to know when things go on. Anyway, Mr. Neale, do you consider
You
yourself...
called me for 1,000 years on radio. Do I recognize that voice?
I hope not, sir. I've been anonymous for years.
No, I recognize the voice. I have a carry-on anyway.
Thank you. Mr. Neale, do you consider yourself in the coaching staff primus inter pares?
You'll have to give me a little help
First
on that
among
one.
equals. Are you the boss?
Or are you definitely the person in charge and Messrs. Dunn and Watt report to you?
Well, I'm held responsible for the final decision, but I can assure you that I go to them and regularly, and a lot of the things we do are a result of their ideas and not mine.
I see.
No more Latin, ma'am, please. No more Latin. This is a hockey program. You're not calling the CBC. Primus inter pares. Really? What a piece of snobbery.
Thought it was a player we should get.
Yeah. Not a bad name for a player, is it? Go ahead, please.
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah.
Go on. You got another winner. Go ahead, please.
Hello?
What's the problem this morning? Go ahead, please.
Harry Neale,
Yes, sir.
on your back checking, I was watching the game listening to the game last night, and on your back checking, why don't your wingers cover their wingers and your defensemen take out their center iceman?
Ask Kevin.
Kevin!
Why aren't the wingers responsible for getting that puck that's shot into the end zone, and the wingers, the defensemen take care of the people coming in?
Well, our system is, if you see our forechecking system is the first man goes after the puck, the second man takes the boards away, the third man stays in the deep slot. So actually you can't get any worse than a 3-on-3. So what you got coming back...
Theoretically.
So what you got coming back is you got one forward coming back with the 2 defensemen with the 3 players, so it's a 3-on-3.
Even Bobby Schmaltz was out of place a couple of times last night.
Well, those things happen, but we've been successful with it 99% of the year. So.
Bobby was a good trade, wasn't he?
Excellent move. It's good for him. I think he can finish his career here, and he might play 2 and 3 years. I hope he does, and the real shot in the arm for us, because goals were a potential problem, and he's got, I think, 7 or 8 already.
Yeah, he stole the puck last night, went down the middle, unassisted, and slapped in the second goal, didn't he?
There aren't many players in the league can shoot the puck better than he can.
No. Don't you think that's one of the weaknesses of the Canucks, or maybe Kevin, that they don't get that way first time? Too much fiddling about in front of the goal?
Well, in the past it's been. I think this year we've improved on that a lot.
I'm just thinking about last night, maybe.
Yeah, you know, that's when we have trouble scoring is because we're trying to pass too much. Like instead of shooting like last night when we realized what was going on, we should have started shooting from everywhere.
Go ahead from Victoria.
Yes, face-offs, they've been a problem for the Canucks this year.
Face-offs.
Yes, they have.
Yeah, I was wondering,
Well, I'll wonder for you. Maybe you should bring Odlofsson back to do the face-offs.
yeah, that's what I was going to say.
See, I can read minds. What do you say to that?
Well, that's a thought, and we've thought of it. Unfortunately, you have to do more than just win the draw, and it's a question of whether you can afford someone who's a good face-off man, which Audie is, when maybe the player we kept can do other things better, and that's what we thought at the end of training camp, and to date, we haven't changed our mind.
You've got to have an all-round man, not just a face-off man.
It's nice to have a specialist, but it's a luxury that I don't think we can afford.
I remembered how Odlofsson changed, and this is not an unkind remark, after he got his jaw broken twice, and I can't hardly blame him.
Well, that makes you wonder whether you should take a run at the next guy,
Right.
that's for sure.
Go ahead, please.
Hello.
That's you.
Yes, I'd like to ask Mr. Neale, now that we have Merriwell coming here, perhaps Kearns could go down to Dallas where he belongs, and maybe Man will get a chance at it.
Well, we're going to make a decision on our defense brigade. We have 8, that's too many. We might keep 7 because we always seem to have one get nicked and hurt, but that's something we're going to talk about when I go to the office.
And you'll decide that probably before Friday.
That's right.
Will Merriwell likely play on Friday?
He's getting in here Thursday night.
Bit late.
Late, but he'll be in the lineup. We may not use him as much Friday as we're going to use him in the future.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, I'd like to ask Mr. Neale about the violence in hockey.
Okay.
Yes.
You know, it's one thing to hard check or whatever, but it really makes the game boring when the fights are coming fast and furious.
We haven't had very many this year, have you noticed?
Well, I'm talking about total hockey, not the Canucks.
Well, they should put a rule in that bans fighting. Instead of.
That'll ever happen?
I do, but it'll be a reluctant move by some of the people. I don't think it would take anything away from our team. I think we'd have one of the tougher teams in the league, and you don't have to fight.
As a Canadian, as a Californian, now in Canada, watching the U.S. play, it's it's totally different than watching the Canadians play.
There was hardly a penalty last night, as I recall. Very few penalties last night.
But if you watch Philadelphia, it's totally different.
Not nowadays, are they? They're not the Broad Street bullies anymore, are they?
Well, they sure used to be.
Well, it depends on if they're winning or losing.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, question for Harry Neale.
Yes, sir.
Tommy Green has proven in the past to have a pretty good shot the past few years. This year he doesn't seem to be shooting nearly as much. Is there a reason for this, due to lack of confidence or whatever?
Oh, Tommy Gradine.
We're continually talking to Thomas to shoot. He's got a better shot than he thinks he's got. But, you know, the European upbringing that he's had in hockey, where they pass the puck more than we North Americans do, I don't think we're ever going to get him to shoot as often as we'd like. But I'd like to shoot him a little more. I think he'd score some goals, but he makes some awful good plays to Neale and Fraser.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, Mr. Neale.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to know what you're going to do with Kearns and when you're going to quit carrying dead weight. In your view on every player you traded away from Vancouver are doing really good with other teams.
They are?
Well, they sure are.
Well, you name me 5.
Well, how about Vive in Toronto?
Well, how about him? Is he better than Williams?
Well,
That's all. Who's next?
how about the guy you traded to Philadelphia, the defenseman?
Who's that?
Well, the big guy here.
Oh, Daly. Well, I wasn't around. I don't know that.
Couldn't do nothing with them here, and as soon as they get traded to other teams,
Talk about the last 2 years. That's all Kevin and I have been here.
or they're going to hit the minors.
Derlego. How's he doing? He's got 4
A lot
goals.
of good players down in the minors
Who?
carrying dead weight here in Vancouver.
Well, I like the dead weight. We're 9, 5, and 4. I wish we'd get a little deader.
What do you got against Dennis Kearns?
He's dead weight. He coughs the puck up more than a junior.
Well, you're probably one of those old fans been here for about 9 or 10 years, eh?
That's for sure.
Know everything? Dennis Kearns
I'm
is
not professing I know everything about the game, but when I see a player carrying the puck like that and see a junior do it better,
Well, I'll tell you, Dennis Kearns comes to the game to play, and you never see him play on the road, but to tell you, he's a valuable member of our team, and I just wish that the fans here realize that, he just tries to work as hard as everybody else, and I just hate it when the fans get on him like they do, and I think that's very, I think that's just bull. I don't like it at all.
They haven't been on him that much this year, have they?
No, not this year, but in the past. He makes
he
one
had
mistake.
a bad time 7 or 8 years ago.
You make one mistake and they get on him, and I think that's not fair. Everybody gets more than one chance.
Yeah, I agree with you. But I'm a softie anyway. Go ahead, please. As long as you don't bring back number 9, you don't even know him.
Gordie Howe?
No, Ed Hatum.
I think you're safe there, Jack.
He was in the attack, the forward line in the first year. And when I get really down, I shout and try and loud enough perhaps for you to hear, bring back Hatum. That's 10 years ago. Hello there.
Jack?
Yeah.
I'd like to ask Kevin a question.
Sure.
For all the people out there, what makes a leader? In your own words, Kevin, what does make you a leader?
Well, I think myself, I try to lead by example. I go out in the ice, and my philosophy of the game is go out there and give 100%, and that's all you can do. We all make mistakes, but as long as everybody's working hard.
Let's ask Harry, what makes Kevin a leader?
Well, he's a respected player by his teammates, and if you know Kevin personally, you know he's got that quality that not only hockey players have in everybody's business. There's people who bob to the top of the barrel, and he's one of them.
Good. Take a bow. Go ahead, please.
Hi, Harry.
Yes, sir.
NHL's planning to reorganize their structure. What teams would you like to see in Vancouver's division?
Well, we have to have Edmonton, Calgary, and Winnipeg. Geographically, we'd be crazy not to do that. And then I would like to see us get Montreal and Buffalo, or Chicago and Montreal, or two of the teams that have been in the National League for a long time.
However, there's going to be 4 divisions as they're keeping right now, so I would figure it would be 5 or 6 teams. I'd like to see the NHL reorganize along geographical lines. That is, have Edmonton, Calgary in our division, but have Los Angeles and Colorado in the division.
Well, I think Hockey Night in Canada has brought into the television sets and the radio sets before that in Canada, Montreal and Toronto and Detroit and Boston, and I think our fans should see 2 of those teams in our division. Now, whether it's not much of a trip for us to go to Toronto and Montreal because we can go direct, but it's a real ordeal to get to Colorado and St. Louis and Minnesota. So geographically, I don't know that we shouldn't think of Toronto and Montreal, and I'm not saying that a Canadian division, but they're very popular teams here. There's a lot of people who used to live in those cities, and we sell those games out all the time, and we have good games against them, and I personally would like to see them there. But we have to get Edmonton, Calgary, and Winnipeg, and then I'm not too particular who the next 2 teams are.
Okay. Kevin, thanks very much for coming this morning. After the Montreal game Friday night, reassure me that it will be 10, 5, and 4.
That's for sure, yeah.
You too, Harry.
Well, we'll...
you've been very nicely and gently treated by everybody here. I mean, nobody's been after your neck at all. Most unusual for a Vancouver sporting figure, isn't it?
Well, I have no complaints, that's for sure.
Just win Saturday night, will you?
Well, that'll keep the complaints away. Nothing solves a problem like a win in this business.
What time are you on the ice for practice?
11:30.
11:30, lots of time. My thanks to Kevin McCarthy, captain of the Canucks, Harry Neale, coach of the Canucks, and I'll watch you Friday night, and I promise no matter what happens that I'll cheer. After the break. Yes. Started with a marital breakup this morning. Then the possibility of a government breakup, I suppose, if you can interpret Jimmy Fleming, multiculturalism czar. And then a change of pace to Canucks. Now I'm back to old clothes and porridge. Another ex-broadcaster who's become a putative prime minister, Chuck Cook. Chuck, I haven't seen you for a while.
That's right, you haven't, Jack.
Can you whip me into a frenzy?
I can try. Right off the bat, you didn't ask Jim Fleming...
Constituency again, please.
North Vancouver-Burnaby.
North Vancouver-Burnaby, yeah.
You didn't ask Jim Fleming the right question.
Chuck Cook will now whip Jack Webster into a frenzy. Whip me into a frenzy.
I could just sit here and be quiet. That'll do it.
That would whip me into a frenzy.
Yeah. Jack, you didn't ask Fleming the right question. You didn't ask him about the Canadian Unity Office. Now, it's not the multiculturalism budget of $11 million. It's the Canadian Unity Office you want to go after.
Well,
their budget has gone up by something like $30 million, and that's your propaganda office, and that's where the money's being spent to attempt to sell to the Canadian people Trudeau's package in terms of the Constitution.
But they have not
and a
done
Charter of
any
Rights.
since the First Minister's Conference, have they?
Now, just a small moment, Jack.
Oh, you tell me.
All right, all you've got to do is look at the literature that's coming out of the Canadian Unity Office, look at the prejudice kinds of things that they're sending out in connection with the Constitution. This is a real selling job of soft soap on the Canadian people. It's a new kind of politics. It's going to continue, and it's going to get worse. You thought you had some fun with some liberal geese flying about? You look out and see what they're going to do in the future. That's another reason for the Constitution being such a bad package, particularly for Western Canada. But you ask your questions and we'll answer them. But remember, you hit these federal members on this great parade.
Yeah, give me this again. There is an office called the Canadian Unity Office.
And that's where the money is.
Is that part of the federal government?
That's right. It's part of the federal government.
Did they set that up for the Quebec referendum?
No, it was set up before that. It's been around for some time, but its budget varies depending on what they're doing.
Does it have a budget from the taxpayer? I mean, it's
yes,
a federal
it does.
Government, civil servant.
It's your tax dollars that support it.
Uh-oh. And you say that it has a $30 million budget.
It is rumored that it's even going to be higher than that in terms of attempting to sell the constitutional package.
And is Fleming the guy?
Fleming is one of the people absolutely responsible for it. If you've been following the proceedings in the House of Commons, you'll realize that there have been some very strong points of privilege dealing with the government using your tax dollars to spend in terms of selling liberal programs. They claim it's for the unity of Canada. Well, it's not. It's for the liberal programs that they're trying to sell. Fleming, I thought, I thought he was embarrassed in trying to defend the fact that they're not permitting the committee to be televised.
Agreed.
And the reason it's not being televised is I don't think Mr. Trudeau and the Liberals want the Canadian people to really understand what's involved in that Charter of Rights and what's involved in the amending formula for the Constitution. What they're trying to do is to turn this country into a unitary state, and darn it, we've got to fight it all the way. And the people of BC have to understand that those proposals make this into not a second class any longer, but a third class citizen as opposed to somebody from Ontario and Quebec.
Tell me, Chuck, when you get off the plane from Ottawa and you go down North Vancouver-Burnaby and whatnot, do people come up to you and say to you, Mr. Cook, I am very concerned about Trudeau's plan to turn this country into a unitary state?
No, they don't.
Because this country has, in effect, apart from some wrinkles, been a unitary state since the tax agreements were entered during the war.
Well, not entirely, Jack. At least there's been the balance of power between provincial powers and federal powers. Trudeau intends to change that totally. It means then that Ottawa can do darn near anything they want to do and tell the rest of the country to forget any ideas they may have. Ottawa will decide. And I don't think that's fair for BC, certainly not for the West.
Well, you know, the budget has certain elements of pleasure for left-wingers, you must say. I don't see how any NDP, including Barrett, can object to the fact that Trudeau has nicked the oil companies for 12 cents a barrel, and he's taking hundreds of millions of dollars away from these people whom we have all, almost by rote, hated for years. The rip-off multinational corporations.
Just one point on that. Jack, it's going to take billions and billions of dollars, probably 5 tar sands plants, to anywhere get us near to being independent. Now then, Trudeau proposes what he will do is he'll put the cost of taking over the major oil companies onto the price of gasoline. That's not going to produce one more barrel of oil in this country. How are we going to be self-sufficient by buying something? We need that foreign investment if this country is to develop and we're ever to be self-sufficient.
Well, mind you, people like myself still have the feeling that we were ripped off very strongly by the foreign ownership of our oil industry. I'll grant you the point that taking it over is a burden and doesn't produce any oil. But somewhere down the road a long way, is there not a good thing in more of our resources being owned in Canada?
Oh, no question about that.
And not siphoned off.
I agree, it should be owned here. Well, mind you, don't say siphoned off, because most of those companies have continued to spend more money in Canada than they ever made in Canada, or they ever took out of this country. More than their profits are being spent in Canada. Don't want to get into that issue particularly, Jack, because sure, everybody agrees that we should own more of our own oil industry. But to do it at this time, and this kind of shortage situation, is not the time for that. Not only that, if you really look at those budget provisions, Canadian Hunter in Alberta announced just the other day, $50 to $100 million of exploration, most of which was planned for Canada, will now be done in the States because the budget is so equally hard on Canadian companies. And this is purely a Canadian company.
Yeah,
they haven't addressed this kind of thing. I have information from Alberta that they're anticipating 250,000 people in the oil industry in Alberta being out of work next spring.
Oh, that's hysterical, surely.
All right, let's wait till March and April and
You
see.
say that 250,000 jobs will be lost in Alberta next spring?
That's entirely possible, Jack. That's how bad the budget is.
You're a
But I didn't come here to talk to you about those things.
No, I know. I was hoping you hadn't. I was hoping you'd come with something bright.
Something different? All right.
Something gossipy.
How about
something a little scandalous and scuttlous after the break?
Got it, Jack. Got it.
Away with the Constitution. I was just trying to rack my old brain about the Conservative Party, and I go back, I think, as far as Anscombe, leader of the Conservative Party in BC.
You go back farther than I do. I can go back to Davy Fulton.
No, and I can go back before that too. There was Anscombe, there was Gin Finlayson, Davy Fulton, now a Supreme Court judge, Scott Wallace, Darrell Warren, Vic Stevens, and the next leader of the Provincial Progressive Conservative Party is Chuck Cook.
No, absolutely not. But it will be.
Chicken Chuck Cook.
Realism, Jack. Realism. It'll be either Brian Westwood or Martin Dayton. The convention is this weekend at the Hotel Vancouver.
Brian Westwood, is that the wee school board fella from the valley somewhere?
That's right, yeah.
Nice wee fella. Looks like Crombie.
Short man, yes. And Martin Dayton, of course, is from the Capilano riding, the North Shore.
Dayton, how do you spell it?
D-A-Y-T-O-N.
Never heard of him.
You've never heard of him?
Why are you wasting your time with the provincial leadership conference for the Progressive Conservative Party?
Well, I'm not, but I'm the president of the BC PC Association. And that covers federal and provincial, both wings of the party.
You used to have two separate offices where you used to fight all the time, federal and provincial. Now you've just got one office.
There's been a lot of fighting in the past. Yeah, we now have one office. Also, I suspect there's more unity and more realism in the provincial party than there's ever been before. We do not wish to be the architect of allowing the NDP into power in this province. The NDP is the enemy in this province of everybody who wants freedom, of everybody who wants a realistic government. We don't want to see 72 to 75 repeated and the Treasury bare again. We want to see good government. We want to see free enterprise in this province.
So in the meantime, if you can't produce a Conservative Party, vote social credit. Is that the message from Chuck Cook?
No, that's not the message from Chuck Cook.
Sounds like it to me.
No, the message
is
this.
I mean, you free enterprises all stick together or you hang separately.
You're absolutely correct. In the Conservative Party, there's more realism in those two leadership candidates than I've seen in a leader of the Provincial Conservative Party in years and years and years.
How much
They understand
money?
the nature of the game.
You have lots of federal money because you're a big federal party. Are you going to finance this provincial leadership and ipso facto membership drive
Absolutely
with lots
not.
of money?
No, sir. Absolutely not. Look, every other province in this country, they're talking, I haven't seen them. No, wait a minute. Well, look at the convention. The last time I looked on Monday, there are now 482 registered delegates coming to that thing. And what we'll be telling them on Friday and Saturday may surprise some of them, quite frankly, because there has to be realism in this party.
Would you like to surprise me? Tell me something that would surprise me.
Tell you something that would surprise you? You were looking for something interesting. Well, how about a speech? BC's choice, rape or separation?
What's this?
BC's choice, rape or separation. Thursday night at the Coach House in North Vancouver, Pat Nolan, who lived out here for a number of years, has been a 15-year member of Parliament from the Maritimes. That will be his topic and what he will be speaking on. He understands this area well. It's a public meeting run by the North Van-Burnaby Constituency Organization. We'll be having an annual meeting after it, but Pat will be here. He's probably one of the best speakers in Parliament.
You accuse the press, as you know, politicians do, of sensationalism and misrepresentation. And here you've got old Nolan, young Nolan, who used to be a member of the Parks Board in this town many years ago.
And chairman of the school board in West Van.
Was that was the chairman of the school board? I knew it was something in a
Yeah.
minor capacity somewhere. You're going to have him come out and bill a hysterical speech, rape, that's rape of BC, or separation, that's separation from Canada, in the independent Conservative Republic of BC. And you know perfectly well that his speech will not fit that bill.
It will come close to it. Come and hear it Thursday night at 8 o'clock at the Coach House.
Do you think BC is about to be raped, and if it is by the Liberals, that we should separate?
I think that the only hope that we have of influencing the Liberal government is to raise the stakes again and point out that just how serious this separation movement is out here, because it is serious, Jack, and the press does not seem to have realized that. The press has done a lousy job in terms of reporting the Constitution. I don't really think many people in the media understand exactly what the provisions in that motion that's in the House right now by the Liberals means in terms of British Columbia.
I did 90 careful minutes on it yesterday. I have broadcast endless informative things on the Constitution, and I know what's in the Constitution reasonably well.
Do you now? What do you think then, sir? Let me ask you a question. What do you think of the provision for referenda?
There are two opinions on interpretation of the provision for referenda. Trudeau has said he is willing to clarify it, said that to me himself. The way it looks now, however, after a deadlock 2 years down the road between the provinces after the time the Constitution comes back, it would seem to me that he can go direct to the people of this country with a federally financed, regulated and ordered referendum on which he could manipulate the answer. That's what I think. I don't think it's good, I think it's bad.
First of all, he can set the question, he can set the time, he can spend all of your tax money promoting his point of view. It's a set-up deal for the unity issue, for this to become a unitary state. It means he can bypass the provincial governments entirely, and it doesn't matter what your government in D.C. thinks about it.
At the same time, there is something to be said for that, because for 20 years, even before you were in the business, I was talking in my illiteracy about the danger of provincial potentates balkanizing this country. Anyway, the deals that were made in Ottawa by provincial politicians who didn't have to answer for those deals to their own constituents. Now, Trudeau, I suppose you've got to say, at least he's saying, come hell or high water, he's going to bring it back, like it or lump it, throw him out.
If Trudeau were really interested in the unity of this country, he would be looking very strongly at Senate reform, because this country still suffers from the 75-95 syndrome. And as long as it's got that, then we are, in effect, third-class citizens.
What good would Senate reform do?
Well, I mean, first of all, you got 75 seats in Quebec, you got 95 seats in Ontario.
You're talking House of Commons reform.
That's right. No, I'm talking Senate reform. Until we get a balanced Senate where we're heard in the halls of Ottawa, and we're heard loud and clear in Ottawa, and each region of the country is heard loud and clear, and they're not allowed to pass legislation which only favors Ontario and Quebec, we're going to be in trouble, and the separatism movement is going to grow.
Are you a separatist?
No.
Will you lead the separatist movement if BC is raped?
No. No, I'm a Canadian. I want this country to stay together, but from what I can see that Trudeau's doing, if this stuff goes through that he's talking about now, the explosion in terms of separatism is going to take place.
You're here to flog a speech that won't actually be delivered in the terms in which you expect it.
Pat Nolan is a brilliant speaker. How do I know? I haven't seen a copy of his speech yet.
You're just here to whip up trouble, Cook.
I'm not here to whip up trouble.
Doing an open line on radio.
No, no, Jack. The key factor is, for heaven's sake, make sure the people understand.
I'll be back after the break.
Hello, 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 hello. Good.
Tomorrow we have a thing we must